A former slot floor manager just revealed something casino executives tried to keep him from sharing, and it could change how you gamble forever. After 17 years working on casino floors across Nevada, this manager walked away with knowledge that could save you thousands of dollars. He's not alone. Over the past 6 months, I've spoken with dozens of former casino employees, from slot technicians to floor supervisors to systems analysts, and they all confirm the same shocking truth. Not all slot machines are created equal. Casinos deliberately mix machines that give you a fighting chance with machines specifically programmed to drain your bankroll as efficiently as possible. And until now, they've hidden exactly how to tell the difference. The stakes here are massive. According to internal reports from former employees, the difference between what insiders call a good machine and a bad machine can mean the gap between losing $50 in an evening and losing $500. The casino industry generates over $40 billion annually from slot machines alone, and former workers say a significant portion of that comes from players unknowingly choosing the worst possible machines on the floor. But here's what these insiders revealed. There are specific, identifiable differences you can spot yourself. You don't need access to internal programming or technical documentation. Former employees are now sharing the exact same markers they used to identify which machines were programmed more favorably and which ones were designed to hold the maximum amount of money. Before we dive into specific machines, you need to understand what actually makes a slot good or bad. According to former slot technicians, three factors determine this: RTP, which stands for return to player percentage; volatility, which measures how frequently and how much a machine pays; and something called hold percentage, which is exactly what it sounds like: how much the casino keeps. Here's what most players don't realize. These numbers vary dramatically from machine to machine, even machines sitting right next to each other on the same casino floor. A former slot director told me that on his floor alone, RTP ranged from 82% on some machines to 94% on others. That 12% difference might not sound massive until you calculate what it means for your bankroll over time. Let me tell you about Marcus. He worked as a slot attendant for 9 years at a major Las Vegas property, and his job included monitoring machine performance and player behavior. Marcus told me he started noticing patterns. Certain machines had regulars who came back week after week, playing modest amounts and leaving relatively happy. Other machines seemed to chew through players quickly. People would sit down with $300 or $400 and be completely tapped out within an hour, looking devastated. Marcus started paying attention to which machines created which outcomes. And then one day during a conversation with a slot technician, he learned something that changed his entire perspective. The machines weren't just randomly paying differently, they were actually programmed differently. According to Marcus and multiple other former employees I spoke with, casinos use sophisticated programming specifications that determine exactly how each machine behaves, and they don't program them all the same way. Now let me show you the first example of what former insiders identify as a genuinely good machine. Machine number 1. Wheel of Fortune, specifically the quarter denomination version found in certain locations. According to reports from former slot technicians, this particular variant has an RTP between 92 and 94%, which sits significantly above the casino floor average. But here's what makes this machine especially notable in the eyes of former employees. The volatility is balanced. You're not chasing massive jackpots that hit once in a lifetime. Instead, the programming provides frequent small wins mixed with moderate payouts that keep your bankroll relatively stable. Former technicians report that the bonus wheel feature triggers approximately once every 100 to 120 spins, which means you're regularly hitting that bonus round that players find exciting. Let me tell you about Patricia. She's a retired teacher who's been playing the slots for over 20 years, and according to a former floor supervisor I interviewed, Patricia figured out something most players never learn. She plays exclusively on this specific Wheel of Fortune quarter machine, always the same denomination, and she's tracked her results for years. Over time, her losses are minimal. Some nights she walks away up $50, other nights she's down 30, but she never experiences those catastrophic losses that wipe out entire bankrolls. The former supervisor told me Patricia understood instinctively what the math confirmed. This machine gave her the best chance of sustained play without devastating losses. But here's what former employees say makes this machine fundamentally different from others that look almost identical. The programming structure is transparent. The bonus wheel shows you exactly what you can win. The pay table clearly displays the odds. Mod CD odds. There aren't hidden features designed to create confusion or obscure the actual mathematics of the game. According to internal reports shared by former workers, this transparency exists because these machines were programmed during an earlier era of slot design, before casinos fully understood how to exploit psychological vulnerabilities through complex bonus structures and layered features. And that brings me to something critical. There's another Wheel of Fortune machine, one that looks nearly identical to this quarter version, that former employees identify as a trap. Multiple slot technicians told me this machine causes more player complaints and more devastating losses than almost any other on the floor. We're going to examine that machine in detail, and when you hear the specific differences, you'll understand exactly how casinos use familiar branding to hide predatory programming. But before we get there, you need to know the 3 specific things former employees told me to look for when trying to identify whether you're sitting at a good version or a bad version of what appears to be the same machine. Wait until you hear about machine number 4. Former floor managers say it looks almost exactly the same as the machine we just discussed, but the internal programming is completely different, and the results for players are devastating. Now let me show you what happens when casinos take that same Wheel of Fortune concept and redesign it specifically to hold more of your money. Machine number 2, Wheel of Fortune dollar version, the high volatility variant. This machine sits on casino floors looking almost identical to the quarter version we just discussed. Same iconic wheel, same recognizable logo, same familiar sounds that players associate with the brand they trust. But according to internal reports from former slot technicians, this machine operates on fundamentally different programming. The RTP drops to somewhere between 86 and 88%, which represents a significant reduction from the quarter version. But here's what makes this particularly insidious, according to former employees. The volatility has been drastically increased. That bonus wheel that triggered approximately once every 100 to 120 spins on the quarter machine? On this dollar version, former technicians report it triggers once every 300 to 400 spins. Let me tell you about Robert. A former floor supervisor shared this story with me, and it perfectly illustrates the trap this machine creates. Robert had been playing the quarter Wheel of Fortune for years. He knew that machine. He understood its rhythm. He won consistently enough to keep coming back, maintaining a modest entertainment budget that rarely exceeded a couple $100s per visit. Then one evening, Robert decided to try the dollar version. It looked the same. It felt the same. The sounds were identical. But according to the floor supervisor who witnessed this session, Robert lost $3,200 in just under 4 hours. He kept waiting for that bonus wheel to trigger. It had always triggered regularly on the quarter machine. He assumed the dollar version would behave the same way, just with proportionally larger payouts. But the bonus never came. Not once during that entire session did Robert trigger the feature he was chasing. The floor supervisor told me Robert looked genuinely confused, like the machine had malfunctioned. But it hadn't malfunctioned. It was doing exactly what it was programmed to do. Here's the psychological manipulation that former employees say makes this so effective. Players develop trust and familiarity with a brand. That Wheel of Fortune logo represents something reliable in their minds. When they sit down at what appears to be the same machine, their brain tells them they're in familiar territory. They expect similar results. But casinos have deliberately created different programming specifications for different denominations of the same brand, and according to multiple former workers, they count on players not understanding this distinction. The visual identification tricks that former floor managers revealed show subtle cabinet design differences, slight variations in button layout, and specific pay table details that indicate which programming version you're actually playing. But most players never notice these markers. They see Wheel of Fortune and assume all versions are fundamentally similar. They're not. Now let me show you another machine that former employees identify as genuinely good, and it represents a completely different category. Machine number 3, Double Diamond, the classic three-reel version. According to reports from former technicians, this machine maintains an RTP between 90 and 92%, and here's why former employees say it's one of the most honest machines on any casino floor. The programming is simple. There are no complex bonus features to manipulate, no layered free spin structures, no hold and spin mechanics. The pay table is completely straightforward and visible at all times. You know exactly what you're playing for, exactly what combinations pay, and exactly what your odds are. A former slot director told me something fascinating about these older machines. He said they were programmed before casinos fully understood the science of player psychology and behavioral manipulation. These machines were designed to be gambling devices, pure and simple. Spin the reels, match the symbols, win or lose based on transparent probability. The trigger frequency for the top payout on Double Diamond sits at approximately once every 250 spins, according to technician reports. That might not sound frequent, but here's what matters. The base game provides consistent small wins that maintain your bankroll while you're playing. You're not experiencing long dead streaks where spin after spin produces nothing. Former employees say this machine was designed during an era when casinos believed player satisfaction came from frequent small wins and occasional big wins, not from elaborate psychological tricks that create the illusion of near misses and almost wins. Let me tell you about Donna. A former floor attendant told me about this regular who's been playing Double Diamond for over 15 years. Donna specifically seeks out these classic three-reel machines, and she told the attendant something that stuck with him. She said these machines are honest. She can calculate her odds. She knows what she's risking. And most importantly, she said, the machine doesn't try to trick her into thinking she's winning when she's actually losing. That phrase caught my attention because it points to something we're going to examine in detail. But before we get there, I want to ask you something. Do you prefer these classic three-reel machines? Or do you like the newer video slots with all the bonus features and animations? Let me know in the comments, because what I'm about to show you next will explain exactly why casinos are slowly removing these classic machines from their floors and replacing them with something that looks similar but operates completely differently. Machine number 4, Triple Red Hot 777, what the industry calls a modern classic remake. This machine appears similar to Double Diamond. It has that classic aesthetic, 3 reels, traditional symbols, bar symbols, and sevens. But according to internal data shared by former technicians, this machine has an RTP between 85 and 87%, significantly lower than genuine classic machines. Here's the specific deception that former employees revealed. This machine uses modern near-miss programming hidden inside a classic-looking package. The reels are weighted to show winning symbols just above or below the pay line constantly. You'll see 7, 7, and then a bar just below where the third 7 needs to land. Or you'll see bar, bar, and the third bar sitting right above the pay line. This creates a psychological effect that genuine classic machines never produced. Your brain interprets these near misses as almost winning, which triggers the same reward anticipation as actual wins. A former technician told me about a player named Gerald who made exactly the mistake casinos count on. Gerald had been playing Double Diamond for years with reasonable success. Then one evening, he sat down at Triple Red Hot 777, assuming it was essentially the same type of machine. It looked classic. It had 3 reels. The symbols were traditional, but Gerald lost $1,800 in a single session. And according to the technician who later reviewed the machine data, Gerald never came close to hitting a significant payout. Those near misses kept him playing. That modern programming hidden inside a classic aesthetic kept triggering his brain to continue, to try one more spin, to chase that combination that kept appearing just out of reach. And if you think that level of deception is bad, wait until you hear what former employees say about the next machine. There's one machine that multiple floor supervisors told me they actually warned their friends and family never to play. So far, we've looked at basic machines where the deception lives in denomination differences and visual tricks. But here's where casinos took manipulation to an entirely different level. Bonus features. According to former employees across multiple properties, bonus features represent the single biggest evolution in slot machine psychology, and they're where casinos hide their most sophisticated deception. A former slot director told me something that should concern every player. He said bonus features weren't designed to give players more chances to win. They were designed to keep players engaged longer, to create emotional peaks and valleys that override rational decision-making, and most importantly, to obscure the actual mathematics of what's happening to your bankroll. Let me show you an example of what former insiders consider a fair bonus feature design before we examine how casinos corrupted that model. Machine number 5, Quick Hit Platinum version. According to internal documentation shared by former technicians, this machine maintains an RTP between 91 and 93%, and the bonus structure provides what former employees describe as genuine value. The progressive jackpots are transparent. You can see exactly what they're worth at any moment. The bonus triggers approximately once every 80 to 100 spins, according to reports from multiple former workers, which means you're regularly engaging with the feature that makes the game exciting. But here's what former employees say makes this machine fundamentally different from the predatory bonus designs we're about to examine. The bonus feature pays proportionally to what you risked reaching it. A former slot director explained it this way. He said Quick Hit was designed during a period when manufacturers believed player satisfaction came from fair exchange. You spend a certain amount chasing the bonus, and when you trigger it, you receive a payout that reflects that investment. The progressive meters provide visible goals. You can watch them climb. You understand what you're playing for. And critically, the volatility is balanced so you're not experiencing massive dead streaks between bonus triggers. Let me tell you about Jennifer, a story a former floor manager shared with me. Jennifer budgets $200 for her casino visits and plays exclusively Quick Hit Platinum. According to the floor manager who observed her play over several months, Jennifer typically plays 3 to 4 hours on that $200 bankroll. She hits the bonus feature regularly, sometimes winning back her initial investment, sometimes ending the session down $50 or $75, but never experiencing those catastrophic losses that destroy entire bankrolls in minutes. The technical detail former employees revealed about Quick Hit involves how the progressive meters actually work. Each bet contributes a small percentage to those climbing jackpot totals, and the trigger mechanism for each progressive level operates on probability ranges that former technicians say are genuinely achievable within reasonable play sessions. That matters because of what came next in the industry's evolution. Here's where the psychological shift happened. Casino management realized players loved bonus features. The excitement of triggering free spins or bonus games created emotional highs that kept players returning. But according to a former employee who worked in slot operations for over 12 years, that's when manufacturers started designing features specifically to exploit that excitement rather than reward it. The confession he shared with me was disturbing. He said once the industry understood that the anticipation of the bonus created more engagement than the bonus payout itself, everything changed. Machines started appearing with bonus features that triggered constantly but rarely paid anything significant. The programming created the emotional spike of triggering the feature while ensuring the actual return stayed minimal. This brings me to a story I need to tell you about a player named David, and I want you to pay attention to the specific details because they reveal exactly how this exploitation works in practice. Machine number 6, Lightning Link, specifically the high-denomination versions. According to internal data from former technicians, the RTP on higher denomination Lightning Link machines drops to between 86 and 88%. But here's where the psychological manipulation becomes genuinely disturbing, according to former employees. The hold and spin bonus feature that defines this machine triggers frequently. Former technicians report the bonus activates approximately once every 60 spins, which sounds incredibly player-friendly until you understand what former workers revealed about the actual mathematics behind those bonus rounds. The hold and spin mechanic creates a powerful illusion of control. You trigger the bonus and suddenly you're collecting symbols, watching them lock into place, seeing the screen fill with potential. Your brain interprets this as active participation in determining your outcome. But according to a former technician who worked specifically on these machines, internal data showed something devastating. The average bonus win was only 12 to 15 times the triggering bet, while players typically spent 60 to 80 times their bet amount reaching that trigger. The math doesn't work. You're losing money chasing a bonus that triggers frequently but pays inadequately. Now let me tell you David's complete story. David was a middle management professional who visited his local casino 2 or 3 times a month. He'd typically budget $300 to $500 for an evening, playing various machines with modest bets. Then he discovered Lightning Link, and according to a former floor supervisor who watched David's pattern change dramatically, the hold and spin feature captured him completely. David started visiting weekly, then twice weekly. The supervisor said David would sit at Lightning Link for entire sessions, sometimes 6 or 7 hours straight, chasing that bonus feature. Here's what the supervisor learned after David's worst weekend. David had lost $7,400 over a Friday and Saturday session. The floor supervisor pulled the machine data afterward and discovered something that made him physically uncomfortable. David had triggered the bonus 47 times across those 2 days. 47 times he'd experienced that rush of the hold and spin activating. But his largest single bonus win was $180. Most were under 50. The programming had kept him in a constant state of anticipation and minor reward while systematically draining his bankroll. But Lightning Link isn't the worst machine in this category, not according to the former employees I interviewed. Machine number 7, Dragon Link, all versions. Multiple former workers identified this as the worst offender in the bonus feature manipulation category. The RTP sits between 85 and 87% according to insider reports. But here's the specific deception that former technicians say makes this machine particularly predatory. The grand jackpot programming creates a chase mentality that overrides rational decision-making. Former employees revealed that the grand jackpot is programmed to hit approximately once every 28,000 spins on average. 28,000 spins. But the machine shows you dragon symbols constantly during the hold and spin bonus, making that grand jackpot feel achievable, feel close, feel like it's just one more session away. Let me tell you about Susan, a story that former floor staff say represents a pattern they witnessed repeatedly with Dragon Link. Susan was a retired widow in her early 70s who started playing Dragon Link about 3 months after her husband passed away. According to a former slot attendant who interacted with Susan regularly, she became fixated on hitting that grand jackpot. She'd seen another player win it once, watched the celebration, saw the slot attendant bring the jackpot paperwork, and from that moment, Susan's play changed completely. The attendant told me Susan visited the casino 4 or 5 days per week, sometimes for 8 or 10 hours per day, playing Dragon Link exclusively. Over 3 months, the attendant estimates Susan lost somewhere around $12,000. Her largest single win during that entire period was $800. The attendant said what haunted him most was watching Susan's face during the hold and spin bonus. Every time those dragon symbols appeared, her expression showed such hope, such certainty that this was finally the moment. But it never was. The near-miss programming on Dragon Link's jackpot symbols represents something former employees describe as genuinely unethical. The machine is programmed to show you the symbols you need for the grand jackpot just frequently enough to maintain hope. But the actual probability of collecting all 15 dragons during a single hold and spin bonus is astronomically low. A former technician told me the weighted reel programming ensures those final dragon symbols appear far less frequently than the initial ones, creating a pattern where you consistently collect 10 or 11 dragons and feel like you barely missed the grand. Your brain doesn't process that as the statistical inevitability it actually is. Your brain processes it as almost winning. Now, you might be thinking Dragon Link represents the worst manipulation casinos employ in bonus features. But former casino managers say there's an entire category of machines that's even more predatory, and they generate the highest profit margins on most casino floors. Wait until you hear what former employees revealed about machine number 10, the one that multiple floor supervisors say actually made them feel guilty watching players lose. The penny slot section sits in every major casino, usually occupying the largest floor space, filled with flashing lights and constant electronic sounds designed to create an atmosphere of affordable entertainment. According to former employees who manage these sections, this is exactly where casinos generate their highest profit margins. A former slot director told me something that fundamentally changed how I understand casino operations. He said the penny slot area wasn't designed for players with small budgets. It was designed to make players with small budgets believe they were gambling responsibly while actually risking the same amounts they'd spend on higher denomination machines, except with significantly worse odds. The mathematics are deliberately obscured. When you see a machine advertising penny slots, your brain anchors to that 1 cent number. You assume you're making small bets. But according to internal reports from former technicians, most penny slots require 40, 50, sometimes 80 or 100 lines to be activated for maximum winning potential. That penny bet becomes $2, $3, even $5 per spin. And the RTP on these machines, according to multiple former employees, sits consistently lower than almost any other category on the casino floor. But here's what former floor managers revealed that should concern every player. There's one exception, one specific penny slot variant that maintains an RTP competitive with quarter and dollar machines. And according to former employees, casinos deliberately hide these machines in low traffic areas specifically because they don't generate the profit margins management demands from penny slot sections. Machine number 6, Wheel of Fortune penny version. Some version, specifically the 40-line variant with the standard progressive structure. According to internal documentation shared by former technicians, this particular version maintains an RTP between 90 and 92%, which represents a massive anomaly in the penny slot category. Former employees say most penny slots operate between 83 and 87%, making this Wheel of Fortune variant dramatically more favorable by comparison. The bonus feature triggers approximately once every 110 spins based on reports from multiple former workers. And critically, the denomination doesn't sacrifice game integrity the way most penny slots do. A former floor manager told me something fascinating about corporate directives regarding this specific machine. He said management consistently instructed floor staff to position these machines in corner locations, against walls, away from main aisles, anywhere that reduced visibility and foot traffic. The reasoning, according to internal communications he saw, was that this machine didn't hold enough money. Players could actually sustain long play sessions without devastating losses, which meant the casino wasn't extracting maximum value from that floor space. He said it bothered him, understanding that corporations actively tried to hide the one penny slot that gave players a legitimate chance. Let me tell you about Margaret, a story a former slot attendant shared that illustrates exactly why casinos want to bury this machine. Margaret is a retiree living on a fixed income who budgets $50 weekly for casino entertainment. She discovered this specific Wheel of Fortune penny version positioned in a back corner near the bathrooms, and according to the attendant who observed her play over 2 years, Margaret plays exclusively this machine, $50 per visit, and typically sustains 4 to 5 hours of play. Some weeks she leaves up $20 or $30. Some weeks she's down 20, but she never experiences those complete bankroll eliminations that characterize most penny slot play. The attendant said Margaret told him she'd tried other penny slots and watched her $50 disappear in 30 minutes. This Wheel of Fortune version, Naaman Run, hidden in that corner, was the only machine where her budget lasted an evening. The visual identification trick former employees revealed involves the pay table structure. The favorable 40-line version displays specific symbol combinations and payout ratios that differ from the higher line versions casinos prefer to promote. Most players never examine these details. They see Wheel of Fortune, penny denomination, and assume all versions are equivalent. But according to former technicians, the programming specifications vary dramatically even within the same brand and denomination based purely on how many lines the machine requires. Now here's where the industry evolution becomes genuinely disturbing. Around 2010, according to a former slot director I interviewed, manufacturers and casino operators realized something that changed penny slot programming forever. Players were focused entirely on the minimum bet denomination. If the machine said penny slots, players perceived it as low-risk gambling, regardless of how many lines they were actually betting or what the total cost per spin actually calculated to. A former operations manager told me he sat in meetings where executives explicitly discussed lowering RTP on penny slots because player psychology was anchored to that penny number. The actual cost per spin could be $2, $3, $5, but because the machine said penny slots, players maintained the mental framework of small bets and affordable entertainment. This brings me to a story I need you to hear in full, because it represents the absolute worst outcome of this industry shift, and it involves the next machine on this list. Machine number 7, Buffalo, all penny denominations. This machine maintains extreme popularity across casino floors, and according to former technicians, the penny version operates with an RTP between 85 and 87%. But here's the specific deception that former employees say makes Buffalo particularly predatory. The 1024 Ways to Win system creates constant winning sounds and animations that mask a brutal mathematical reality. Former technicians revealed that Buffalo is programmed to hit wins on approximately 35 to 40% of spins. That sounds remarkably player-friendly until you understand what former workers explained to me about these wins. Internal data showed that over 70% of winning spins paid less than the total bet amount. This introduces something former employees call losses disguised as wins. You bet $2 on a spin. The machine lights up, plays winning sounds, shows you a winning combination, and pays you $1.40. Your brain processes the sounds and lights as winning. The machine celebrated. You got paid, but you just lost 60 cents. A former technician told me this programming represents the most psychologically manipulative development in modern slot design because it hijacks your brain's reward system. Those winning sounds trigger dopamine release. Your brain experiences the win emotionally, even though mathematically you just lost money. Let me break down a real session a former floor supervisor tracked. A player named Robert agreed to let the supervisor document his Buffalo play for research purposes. Robert played 300 spins at $2.50 per spin, total $750 wagered. He hit winning combinations on 127 spins. That's a 42% hit rate, which sounds incredible. Robert felt like he was winning constantly. The machine was celebrating continuously. But when the supervisor calculated Robert's actual return, he'd won $410 across those 127 winning spins. Robert ended the session down $340, but his perception was that he'd been winning all night. The losses disguised as wins had completely obscured the reality of his mathematical situation. Machine number 8, dancing drums, penny version specifically. According to insider reports, the RTP sits between 84 and 86%, making this one of the lowest returning machines in regular casino floor rotation. But the specific deception former employees revealed about dancing drums goes beyond simple RTP manipulation. The bet multiplier feature represents what multiple former technicians described as deliberately predatory design. Players don't realize that increasing the multiplier doesn't change the RTP. It doesn't improve your odds. It doesn't increase your winning potential proportionally. It just allows you to lose money faster while maintaining the same house edge. The bonus trigger programming creates an additional trap. Base game bonus triggers approximately once every 200 to 250 spins, according to former technician reports. But players using the bet multiplier burn through their bankroll long before reaching that trigger frequency. A former operations manager told me dancing drums generated more player complaints than almost any machine on his floor, but the corporate refused to remove it because the whole percentage was so profitable. Now, I need to tell you about Carol, and I'm warning you this story is difficult to hear. Carol was a 68-year-old widow who received a $45,000 life insurance payment after her husband died. According to multiple former floor staff who knew Carol, she started visiting the casino about 3 weeks after receiving that payment. She'd never been a regular gambler. Former employees say she seemed lonely, looking for somewhere to spend time, somewhere with activity and noise and other people. She discovered dancing drums, and according to a former slot attendant who interacted with Carol almost daily over 6 weeks, that machine became Carol's entire world. The attendant said Carol would arrive mid-morning and play until evening, always dancing drums, always using the bet multiplier because another player had told her it increased winning chances. Over 6 weeks, former employees estimate Carol lost $38,000 of that $45,000 life insurance payment. When Carol finally stopped coming to the casino, another regular told the attendant that Carol had spent almost everything, that her daughter had intervened, that Carol was devastated. The former slot attendant who shared this story told me something that stayed with me. He said he watched Carol play almost every day. She was lonely, and dancing drums made her feel excited and engaged. When she finally stopped coming, he felt physically sick, knowing what had happened, knowing that machine had systematically extracted nearly everything she had. He said Carol's story wasn't unique. Multiple former floor staff reported seeing similar patterns, particularly with elderly players, particularly with dancing drums, and machines with similar psychological programming. The attendant told me this was ultimately why he left the industry. He said he couldn't watch it anymore, couldn't be part of a system designed to exploit vulnerability that efficiently. But casinos aren't just using deceptive programming and obscured mathematics. Former managers reveal there's an entire science to where they physically place good versus bad machines on the casino floor, and the next machine I'm going to tell you about is always positioned in specific locations for very calculated reasons. Here's what former casino employees revealed about a physical placement strategy that should fundamentally change how you approach any casino floor. Former floor managers across multiple properties confirmed they operated with detailed maps showing exactly where to position high hold versus low hold machines, and these placement decisions weren't random. They were based on sophisticated understanding of player psychology and traffic patterns. A former operations director told me something that explains the entire system. He said casinos position good machines, the ones with better RTPs and more balanced programming, in high visibility areas specifically to create the impression of winners everywhere. Players walking through main aisles see people hitting payouts, hear bells and celebrations, and develop the belief that the casino floor is filled with winning opportunities. Meanwhile, the bad machines, the ones programmed to hold maximum percentages, get positioned in areas where players have already committed to staying. Back corners, dedicated brand sections, machines facing walls. Once you've walked to those locations, you're psychologically invested. You came to play that specific machine or brand, which means you're far less likely to leave even when it's not paying. The internal terminology former employees revealed is disturbing in its honesty. Casinos distinguish between show machines and grind machines. Show machines are positioned where they generate visible excitement and create the atmosphere of winning. Grind machines are positioned where they systematically extract money from committed players. A former slot director told me his property maintained spreadsheets breaking down profit per machine by floor location, and the correlation was mathematically undeniable. Location determined player behavior, and programming was assigned accordingly. Now let me show you a specific example of a good machine that former employees say is almost always positioned near entrances or high traffic aisles for exactly these strategic reasons. Machine number 8, Blazing Sevens, specifically the Quarter 3 real version. According to reports from former technicians, this machine maintains an RTP between 91 and 93%, making it one of the better returning machines in most casino rotations. But here's what multiple former floor managers confirmed about placement strategy. These machines are deliberately positioned in near casino entrances, near the cage where players collect winnings, near main aisles where foot traffic concentrates. The reason, according to a former operations supervisor, is simple psychology. Casinos want people walking by to hear the bells, see the payouts, watch someone win $200 or $300, and develop the belief that this casino floor is generating winners constantly. The programming provides frequent small payouts, approximately once every 8 to 12 spins according to former technician reports, which means these machines create almost constant positive reinforcement sounds. The top payout triggers roughly once every 300 to 400 spins, often enough that if you position 20 Blazing Sevens machines near your main entrance, someone is hitting a significant payout every 15 or 20 minutes during peak traffic times. Let me tell you about Frank, a story a former floor supervisor shared that perfectly illustrates how this placement strategy creates sustained play. Frank is a retired electrician who's been visiting the same casino for over 8 years. And according to the supervisor, Frank plays the same Blazing Sevens machine positioned 10 feet from the main entrance. That specific machine, same location. The supervisor said Frank's pattern never varies. He arrives mid-afternoon, plays 2 to 3 hours, and maintains remarkably small losses over time. Some sessions he's up $40 or $50. Some sessions he's down 30. Over 8 years, the supervisor estimates Frank's total losses are probably under $2,000, which for regular multi-year play represents an unusually sustainable pattern. But here's why casinos accept Frank's modest losses. Frank sits at that entrance machine, winning frequently enough to create visible excitement. Other players walk past, see Frank hitting payouts, hear the celebration sounds, and develop positive associations with the casino environment. Frank functions as unpaid marketing, and that entrance machine's better programming enables his role. Former employees revealed that if you're going to play slots, these entrance area machines genuinely offer better odds than machines deeper in the casino. A former slot director told me this wasn't speculation or theory. It was documented corporate strategy. Properties he worked at received explicit directives to ensure entrance machines maintained higher RTPs and more frequent payout cycles, specifically to create the impression of winning as players entered. But now we need to examine in the opposite strategy, and this next machine represents everything former employees say is wrong with placement-based manipulation. Machine number 9. Cleopatra, specifically the IGT version positioned in dedicated brand sections away from main traffic areas. Here's what former technicians revealed that should shock you. The same Cleopatra machine, visually identical, can have dramatically different programming based purely on where casino management decides to position it. RTP on entrance area Cleopatra machines runs between 89 and 91%, according to insider reports. But that same machine, when positioned in back sections or dedicated IGT areas, operates between 85 and 87%. A former technician made a confession that I initially didn't believe until multiple other former workers confirmed the exact same practice. He said he personally swapped programming chips on Cleopatra machines based on management directives about floor positioning. Same cabinet, same visual appearance, completely different internal programming determined solely by where the machine would sit on the casino floor. The bonus trigger frequency demonstrates this manipulation clearly. Entrance-positioned Cleopatra machines trigger the free spin bonus approximately once every 120 spins. Backsection machines trigger that same bonus once every 180 spins, according to former technician documentation. Players cannot tell the difference without accessing internal settings. The machines look identical. The pay tables display the same information. But the actual mathematical reality of your odds changes dramatically based purely on physical location. Let me tell you about Linda's experience, a story that former floor staff say represents a pattern they witness constantly. Linda played Cleopatra near the casino entrance one evening and had a genuinely positive session. She triggered the bonus multiple times, ended up $70, and left feeling like she'd found her machine. 2 weeks later, Linda returned specifically to play Cleopatra. She couldn't find the exact machine near the entrance, so she found another Cleopatra in a dedicated section toward the back of the casino floor. According to a former attendant who later spoke with Linda, she lost $900 in just over 2 hours. The bonus barely triggered. The base game felt completely different. Linda assumed she'd just experienced bad luck, normal gambling variance. She never realized she'd actually played a machine with fundamentally different programming than the one that had paid her 2 weeks earlier. This chip-swapping practice represents something former employees describe as crossing a clear ethical line. But it's completely legal as long as the programming stays within approved RTP ranges. A former operations manager told me the approved range in his jurisdiction was 82 to 94%, meaning casinos could program the same visual machine anywhere within that 12% spread and remain in full compliance. What bothered him most, he said, was watching players like Linda assume they were experiencing random variance when they were actually experiencing deliberately different programming based solely on where they chose to sit. Now, around 2015, according to multiple former employees, Casinos started implementing technology that made this placement strategy even more predatory. And the final two machines on this list represent what former workers describe as the worst evolution in modern slot design. One former casino manager told me these machines used technology that made him genuinely uncomfortable, and he eventually refused to add more to his floor before the corporation overruled his decision. We've examined how casinos use programming deception, bonus feature manipulation, and strategic floor placement to separate good machines from bad ones. But the newest generation of slots employs technology that former employees say enters territory they find genuinely disturbing. A former IT systems analyst told me these machines represent the future of casino gambling, and according to internal corporate communications he accessed, every machine will eventually incorporate these systems. What makes this evolution particularly concerning, he said, is that players have no way of knowing when they're playing against these advanced technologies. The machines look identical to standard slots. The gameplay feels the same. But underneath the familiar interface, programming is operating that fundamentally changes the relationship between player and machine. Machine number 9, Invaders from Planet Moolah, specifically the server-based gaming version. This introduces technology that former employees across multiple properties identified as crossing into deeply problematic territory. Server-based gaming means the machine isn't operating on fixed internal programming. It's connected to central servers that can adjust settings remotely without anyone physically touching the cabinet. According to a former IT technician who worked directly with these systems, the RTP on server-based machines can range anywhere from 82 to 89%, depending on time of day, current casino performance metrics, and corporate directives that can change hourly. Here's what that means in practice. You might play Invaders from Planet Moolah on Friday evening and be playing against an 88% RTP. You return Tuesday afternoon, sit at the exact same machine, and you're playing against an 83% RTP. The machine looks identical. Your bet amount is the same. But the fundamental mathematical reality of your odds has shifted 5 percentage points without any visible indication. The bonus trigger frequency varies according to these remote adjustments. Former technicians report observing patterns where the bonus triggered once every 100 spins during low-traffic midweek periods, then once every 200 spins during peak weekend hours. The legal framework permits this as long as settings remain within approved ranges, but those approved ranges can span 7 or 8 percentage points, which represents an enormous difference in player outcomes. A former operations director told me something that crystallized why this technology bothers so many former employees. He said players operate under the assumption that a slot machine is a consistent device with fixed programming. That assumption, which feels fundamental to the concept of gambling, no longer applies to server-based machines. You're not playing against fixed odds. You're playing against odds that shift based on factors you cannot see, cannot predict, and cannot defend against. Let me tell you about Keith's experience, documented by a former floor supervisor over 6 months. Keith visited the same casino every Wednesday evening, played the same Invaders from Planet Moolah machine for 2 to 3 hours, and tracked his results meticulously in a notebook. According to the supervisor who later reviewed Keith's documentation, the results showed variance patterns that were statistically improbable if the machine maintained consistent programming. Some Wednesday sessions, Keith's bankroll lasted the full 3 hours with multiple bonus triggers and modest losses. Other Wednesday sessions, identical bet patterns and time investment. Keith's bankroll was eliminated in 45 minutes with almost no bonus activity. Keith assumed he was experiencing normal gambling variance. The supervisor, who had access to the server-based adjustment logs, knew Keith was actually experiencing programming changes that shifted his RTP by 4 to 6 percentage points across different sessions. Keith never knew. The machine never indicated anything had changed. But the mathematical reality of what he was playing against varied dramatically from week to week based on corporate server adjustments. Former employees say this technology represents a fundamental shift in casino operations. Casinos can now tighten machines during profitable busy periods and loosen them during slow times to maintain targeted revenue numbers, all without any visible changes to the gaming floor. A former slot director told me his property used this capability routinely, adjusting RTP ranges down during weekend evenings when the casino was packed, then adjusting them up during Tuesday and Wednesday afternoons when they needed to encourage play. Players experiencing both scenarios would never realize they were facing completely different mathematical odds based purely on when they chose to visit. But server-based gaming isn't the worst technology former employees revealed. There's one more machine, one more system that multiple former workers described as genuinely unethical despite being completely legal. Machine number 10, 88 Fortunes, specifically the dynamic gaming version with integrated player tracking. According to former systems analysts, this machine represents what they consider the most predatory evolution in slot technology. The RTP ranges from 83 to 87%, but here's the devastating innovation that former employees say crosses every ethical line. This machine accesses your player card data and adjusts volatility patterns based on your gambling history. Not the RTP itself, which would potentially violate regulations, but the volatility distribution within that legal RTP range. A former analyst explained the distinction this way. The machine maintains its approved 85% RTP, whether you're a new player or a 10-year regular. That's legal compliance. But if your player card history shows you typically continue playing after small wins, the machine can be programmed to provide those small wins more frequently while reducing the probability of larger payouts. You're still getting 85% back mathematically, but the distribution of how you receive that 85% shifts based on your psychological profile. The system analyzes your historical play patterns, how long you typically play, your average loss threshold before leaving, your win and quit patterns, whether you chase losses or stop after modest wins. All of this data collected over months or years of tracked play feeds into programming that adjusts the volatility experience specifically for you. A loyal player with high loss tolerance might experience longer dead streaks punctuated by occasional moderate wins. A new player might experience frequent small wins designed to encourage continued play and card usage. The RTP remains legal and consistent, but the experience is personalized in ways that exploit your specific behavioral patterns. Let me tell you about Angela, a story that former employees say exemplifies exactly why this technology is so disturbing. Angela was a regular player, visiting 2 or 3 times weekly for over 4 years. Her casino host encouraged her to use her player card consistently, explaining it would generate comps and rewards. According to a former floor manager who knew Angela, her play became noticeably less profitable over several months. She started losing faster, her bankroll lasting shorter periods, her bonus triggers seeming to decrease despite playing the same machines at the same denominations. Angela assumed her luck had changed. The former floor manager learned something different. Angela's player card had been flagged in the system as a high-tolerance player based on years of tracked data. The machines she played, including 88 Fortunes, were adjusting volatility patterns within legal RTP parameters specifically for her card. When the floor manager saw this documented in system reports, he told me he felt physically sick. Angela had been loyal for years, and the casino's response was to optimize how efficiently they could extract money from her based on detailed psychological profiling. Multiple former employees confessed that this player tracking integration represents where they personally drew the line. A former casino host said she quit specifically because of this technology, telling me she couldn't encourage players to use loyalty cards, knowing how that data would be weaponized against them. Another former manager said he raised concerns with corporate about the ethical implications and was told the system was completely legal and represented the industry's future direction. A former executive provided perhaps the most chilling insight. He said the casino industry is moving toward complete personalization, where every machine will eventually know who's playing through facial recognition or card tracking and adjust accordingly within legal parameters. The gap between good and bad machines, he said, will eventually be replaced by machines that customize the experience for each individual player based on maximum extraction efficiency calculated from their personal data. So here's what you now know from former casino employees. Good machines tend to be older technology with transparent mechanics and balanced programming, usually positioned in visible high-traffic areas. Bad machines incorporate modern deceptive features, predatory bonus structures, strategic placement in committed areas, and increasingly, technology that personalizes the extraction process. Former employees across multiple properties confirm the same pattern. As technology advances, the gap between what benefits players and what benefits casinos widens systematically. But every former employee I spoke with ultimately said the same thing. The house edge exists on every machine. Good versus bad is relative. The casino always wins mathematically over sufficient time. A former slot director put it most directly. He said the best slot machine is the one you walk past entirely. But if you're going to play despite knowing all this, at least now you understand what we understood working inside the system. You know which machines are programmed more favorably, which technologies to avoid, and how placement indicates programming. That's information casinos never wanted players to have. If this shocked you, share it with anyone you know who gambles. Let me know in the comments which machines you've played and whether your experience matches what these insiders revealed. Tell me what else you want me to investigate about what casino employees won't tell you. Because knowledge is power, and now you have information casinos spent decades trying to keep hidden.